All right, appreciate it. So welcome everybody. My name is Nathan Smith. I'm the Business Development Manager for Cell Therapies, and I'd really like to talk to you about, and I know you've heard a lot about Australian cell and gene Australian capabilities in general, but specifically I'd like to talk about Australian cell and gene therapy capabilities and why I think Australia is a great place right now for cell and gene therapy development, all the way from early research stage to commercial supply and market demand. So who is Cell Therapies? Cell Therapies, we're a contract development and manufacturing organization based out of Melbourne, Australia, located at the Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre in Melbourne. And so our goal is to help other organizations, work with other organizations to manufacture for both clinical trials and commercial supply, along with supporting their programs, their clinical programs and their commercial programs with apheresis management, support and advisory services. And really our main goal is to help groups with cell and gene therapy products to commercialize their program from beginning to end, all the way through each stage of the clinical life cycle to commercial supply. Our capabilities and expertise, we are licensed by the Australian Therapeutic Goods Administration, and so our manufacturing facility conducts GMP manufacturing under this license for both clinical trials and commercial supply. We've had over 18 plus years experience supplying these type of products for clinical trials and commercial market. And our control and process development, it goes from needle to needle, everything from apheresis collection or tissue collection on the front end, all the way through manufacturing and testing and release for supply to the clinic on the back end. And with that, we needed to have a strong quality system, and our quality system has been audited by the TGA and other regulatory agencies and clients over the last 18 plus years. I would say we've probably undergone over 25 to 30 audits, with the most recent audit by the TGA for our commercial license. And our clients include everything from big pharma, development companies, to research groups from all over the world, including US, Europe. We've worked with Korean companies in the past, Japanese companies, and companies in Southeast Asia as well. So I guess the big question here is, why is Australia such a good place for cell and gene therapy development? I think there are a number of key pieces and key reasons for this. Number one is the clinical trial framework, and I'm sure this has probably been talked about previously, but the clinical trial notification pathway, which is the CTN pathway by the TGA, is the fastest in the world from submission of a clinical protocol to initiation of clinical trials and actually treating patients. Now, there are requirements for meeting CTN pathway, and I'll go into that in a minute, but it is one of the fastest in the world. And then secondly, the TGA is starting to become very familiar with cell and gene therapy products. As an example, CAR T products are obviously being used, and patients are being treated in Australia right now with CAR T. But in the past, they've worked with, and they've approved everything from autologous chondrocyte implants through to mesenchymal stem cell type products, and have reviewed those. So they're very comfortable with cell and gene therapy products and regenerative medicine products. And then finally, any clinical trial data that is obtained during trials with Australian patients is suitable for filings all over the world, including the US and Europe. So if a Korean organization needs Caucasian or Western patients, you may be able to access those patients in Australia and utilize that for a filing in the US and Europe. Another reason for Australian cell and gene therapy development, and why I think it's such a good place, is that the clinical centers of excellence in Australia are world-class. And I think the hospitals are very, they're very aware of cell and gene therapies and how this is the next wave of treatments that can meet unmet medical needs. And they have a lot of experience with executing these cell and gene therapy trials. Peter, obviously I'm affiliated with, and Cell Therapies is affiliated with Peter Mac, but a bunch of these other groups and hospitals within Australia, Westmead and Royal Prince Alfred, Royal Perth, all of these groups have experience in executing cell and gene therapy trials for Australian patients. And then the research and development capabilities. I think Australian research has been internationally recognized for its quality and has been has gone on to support programs all over the world. And the cell and gene therapy programs at Peter Mac, at the Queensland Institute of Medical Research, at Westmead, Hudson, all over Australia, I think are thriving and are developing new technologies that can hopefully make it into the commercial market. For the global clinical trials, again, there are two pathways that for the TGA for clinical trials in Australia. The one I talked about previously was the clinical trial notification scheme on the left. On the right is the clinical trial approval scheme. Now, the clinical trial approval scheme is not any faster than, say, a U.S. IND or a European CTD, but the clinical trial notification scheme is extremely fast. Once you submit, you only need to get local ethics approval, and you don't need. And then once the ethics approval is given, then the TGA is notified. The TGA doesn't do a full review, and you don't need to have a full CMC as you would for, say, an IND submission. But they're only applicable to. They only apply to certain types of products, be it products with very low safety risk. So minimally manipulated products, non-genetically modified products, things like that. However, if you do have a more advanced product like a CAR T or something like that, if you already have opened up a study, say in the US or Europe, that can be brought over to Australia under the CTN pathway and get approval. And so you can access Australian patients quicker. And so that's one of the, I think the CTN pathway has been used a number of times by international companies to access Australian patients and initiate clinical trials in Australia. Additional reasons for why I think Australia is great for cell and gene therapy development. And I'm sure you've heard about the R&D tax incentive, which is where a foreign company can if they've established an Australian entity, they can actually do their development in Australia and clinical trials in Australia and actually get an offset for their R&D costs. So it's a nice way of actually recouping some of your of the spend for your research and development. And then also the reimbursement potential for cell and gene therapy products is finally being realized, right? The CAR T, there are commercial CAR Ts that are being reimbursed by the Australian government. And I think that's something that's taken a long time to, I think, actually, come to life, but it's, now that it's here, it is a pathway for commercialization. And it's demonstrating that Australia can and does support these type of products. And then they have the Australian government's been investing in both clinical capacity, manufacturing facilities, and further development and R&D operations. So it's something where there's a lot of government support for cell and gene therapies, and I think it's something that they look for international partners, and I think that's a good place where Australia can collaborate with Korean organizations. And then finally, there's manufacturing infrastructure such as Cell Therapies, our group, but QGen, Royal Prince Alfred, Royal Perth, Westmead. There are a number of groups within Australia that are focused on supporting cell and gene therapy clinical trials and being able to manufacture these products for human patients. And some of these groups have that capability to support the product lifecycle, like Cell Therapies. We can do everything from first in human studies all the way through supporting commercial supply. So as a case study, I'd like to point out, a commercial CAR T that's currently available in Australia. Their pivotal clinical trial was under a US IND, and I think had been extended to Europe, but it also had been extended to Australia under that clinical trial notification scheme, the CTN scheme. And when that happened, the sites in Australia actually had the highest number of patients enrolled outside of North America. So the enrollment was really high because of the enthusiasm for these type of studies. After the pivotal trial was complete, they were able to gain marketing authorization in the US and Europe, and finally in Australia through the TGA. And then they were able to negotiate reimbursement with the Australian government. Alongside that, they transferred their commercial manufacturing process to an Australian contract manufacturer, and then identified clinical centers of excellence that have the capability to be able to treat patients and understand their product and understand some of how to treat patients that are undergoing CAR T therapies and things like that. So I think it's a good case. It's not a Korean example, but it's a good case study of how an international client has accessed the Australian market, accessed Australian patients, and we're able to turn that into a commercial program. So I'll leave it at that. I do think cell and gene therapies have a great it's a great ecosystem within Australia right now, and a great time to invest and to collaborate with Australian organizations. And again, I'm the business development manager for Cell Therapies, and if you want to get in touch with me, please contact me by phone or email or through our website. All right, thank you very much.